February 1st, 2026, 1:47 in the morning, a doorbell camera at a quiet home in Tucson, Arizona, goes dark. Not because the power went out, not because of a storm. Someone disconnected it, deliberately, precisely, in the middle of the night. 41 minutes later, at 2:28 a.m., a signal that had been pulsing continuously, every 2 to 3 minutes, from inside Nancy Guthrie's chest, goes silent. The device was her pacemaker, and what investigators know, what forensic scientists are only now beginning to understand, is that whoever walked into that house on the morning of February 1st may have left something behind that they had absolutely no idea existed. Not a fingerprint, not a footprint, not a fiber, something far more invisible, far more permanent. And tonight, 29 days after Nancy Guthrie vanished, we're going to show you exactly what that is, and why it may be the only thing standing between this case and a permanent silence. This is Crime Blackline Archive, and this is the Nancy Guthrie Investigation Day 29. Before we go any further, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. At Crime Blackline Archive, we cover real cases with real facts, verified sources, and the kind of depth that this story deserves. We don't speculate. We investigate. New cases every week. And this one isn't over yet. Let's start with what we know. Nancy Guthrie is 73 years old. She is the mother of NBC Today anchor Savannah Guthrie. She has lived in Tucson, Arizona for years, a quiet life in a quiet neighborhood in the Catalina foothills. She has a pacemaker. She has a Ring doorbell camera. She has a routine that her family knew well. On the night of January 31st into February 1st, that routine ended. At 1:47 a.m., the Ring camera at her front door was disconnected. Physically disconnected, not a network failure. At 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker stopped syncing with her iPhone. That device, which had been transmitting a Bluetooth signal every 2 to 3 minutes, reaching out continuously for the phone it had always known, went quiet. Or rather, it was taken somewhere the phone could no longer hear it. That 41-minute window is the heartbeat of this entire investigation. And now, 29 days later, two technologies that have never been used together in a case like this are being deployed simultaneously. One reaching into the physical world, the other reaching into the invisible architecture of every decision the perpetrator. So tonight, we're going to walk through both of them. But first, the DNA. On February 16th, the Pima County Sheriff's Department made a significant announcement. During the search of the area surrounding Nancy Guthrie's home, investigators recovered a pair of black gloves, approximately 2 miles from her front door. These weren't just any gloves. They were dark, utilitarian, and found in an area that suggested they had been discarded with intent rather than lost accidentally. The discovery immediately elevated the urgency of the ground search, as these items represented a tangible link to the individual or individuals responsible for Nancy's disappearance. Those gloves contained DNA. That DNA was carefully collected, preserved, and sent to a specialized laboratory for analysis. The profile was developed. And then investigators did what law enforcement has done in cases like this for 3 decades. They ran it through CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System. This national database, maintained by the FBI, contains genetic profiles from convicted offenders, from individuals who have been arrested, and from crime scene evidence collected across all 50 states. It is the first and often most crucial step in identifying a suspect through DNA. The result came back on February 17th, confirmed publicly by CBS News. No match. The DNA from those gloves, the DNA that may have come directly from the hands of whoever was involved in Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, did not match a single entry in the largest forensic DNA database in the United States. Now, for many people watching this, that sounds like a dead end, and on the surface it looks like one. So it's the moment in countless true crime documentaries where the detective sighs, the music turns somber, and the case goes cold. But what it actually tells investigators is something far more specific and far more unsettling. It means the person whose DNA is on those gloves has never been convicted of a felony. They have never been arrested in a jurisdiction that requires DNA collection. They have never appeared in the system. This isn't the profile of a career criminal who got sloppy. This is someone who, at least on paper, doesn't exist in the criminal record of this country. This individual has managed to navigate life without leaving a genetic footprint in the official databases designed to catch them. This fact alone suggests either a level of careful planning or simply a complete absence of prior criminal history that complicates traditional investigative avenues and that changes everything about how this investigation has to move forward. Because when CODIS fails, when the traditional pathways to identification are exhausted, there is another path, a newer path. A path that, until a few years ago, existed only in the imagination of the most forward-thinking forensic scientists in the world. And it is the path that Pima County investigators and the FBI, confirmed by CNN on February 19th and CBS News on February 24th, are now actively pursuing. It's called Investigative Genetic Genealogy. And to understand why it matters, why it represents a fundamental shift in how cases like this are solved, you need to understand what happened in Sacramento, California, in April of 2018, Joseph. James DeAngelo was 72 years old. He was a retired police officer. He lived in a quiet suburb. His neighbors knew him as a grandfather. He mowed his lawn. He went to the store. He lived a normal life. He was, by all outward appearances, an unremarkable man. And for more than 40 years, he had been one of the most prolific and terrifying criminals in American history, the man known to the public as the Golden State Killer. Between 1974 and 1986, DeAngelo committed at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and more than 100 burglaries across California. His reign spanned multiple counties, leaving a trail of unsolved cases and unanswered questions. He left DNA at every scene. He was never caught. Law enforcement ran that DNA against every available database, decade after decade. No match, no name, no face. The case remained a testament to a man who seemed to have disappeared into the fabric of ordinary life, leaving behind only his genetic signature, until a genealogist named Barbara Ray Venter sat down with a DNA file and a database that had nothing to do with criminal records. What Ray Venter used was GDmatch, a consumer genealogy platform where everyday people upload their DNA results from. Services like 23andMe or Ancestry DNA to find distant relatives. These platforms are designed for individuals seeking to explore their family history, connect with long-lost cousins, or simply understand their ethnic origins. They are not, by design, criminal databases. But Ray Venter saw their potential. She took the Golden State Killer's crime scene DNA, uploaded it to GDmatch, and began building family trees, not looking for the killer directly, but looking for his cousins, his third cousins, his great-great-grandparents' descendants. Anyone who shared enough genetic material to create a thread. According to investigators and reporting by Forbes, the process worked like this. She found distant relatives who had voluntarily submitted their DNA, individuals who, out of curiosity or a desire to connect with family, had unknowingly provided a crucial link. She built genealogical trees from those matches, going back generations, then forward again, narrowing the field through public records, vital statistics, census data, and social media. Slowly, methodically, she built a list of candidates. Then investigators collected DeAngelo's DNA from a discarded item, a car door handle, and confirmed the match. 44 years after his first known crime, Joseph James DeAngelo was arrested in his driveway. He pleaded guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder in 2020. He is serving 11 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He was caught not because he made a mistake in 2018. He was caught because a distant relative, someone who had never committed a crime, someone who simply wanted to know their ancestry, had uploaded their DNA to a public database years earlier. And that thread was enough. That is the technology now being applied to the DNA from the gloves found near Nancy Guthrie's home. CBS News confirmed on February 24th that investigators in the Guthrie case have formally turned to investigative genetic genealogy. Emmanuel Katranakis, former deputy chief of NYPD forensics with 25 years in the field, spoke directly to this development. His words were precise. If this perpetrator has a relative that is a convicted offender in the database, you build a family tree around it. You're throwing a wide net. You're looking for cousins. But Katranakis also identified the variable that no one in mainstream coverage has fully addressed. The success of this technique depends entirely on one thing that investigators cannot control: whether a relative of the suspect has voluntarily submitted their DNA to a consumer genealogy platform, GED Match, Family Tree DNA, one of the databases that allows law enforcement access. If the suspect's family has not done this, if no cousin, no sibling, no distant relative has ever sent a saliva sample to Ancestry DNA or 23andMe, then the thread doesn't exist. And the technology, as powerful as it is, cannot create a connection from nothing. This is the inherent tension at the center of this investigation right now. Susanna Ryan, director of the laboratory Pure Gold Forensics, added another layer of complexity when she addressed investigators about the process. The concern she raised, and this is something that has not been widely reported, is about the physical DNA sample itself. In some cases, she explained, the original laboratory conducting traditional testing uses the entire DNA sample in the course of standard analysis. When investigators later decide to pursue genetic genealogy, there may be nothing left to work with. Whether that is the case here, whether enough material remains from the glove DNA to support a genealogical search, has not been publicly confirmed. But it is a variable that investigators are acutely aware of. And it is one more reason why 29 days in, the public silence from the Pima County Sheriff's Department on this specific avenue is being watched carefully by forensic experts. The thread that may or may not exist, the sample that may or may not be sufficient, these are the critical unknowns that define the current state of the DNA investigation. To truly appreciate what is at stake with that DNA sample, it helps to understand how rare and how powerful the genealogical approach actually is in practice. When Barbara Ray Venter began her work on the Golden State Killer case, she was operating in largely uncharted legal and scientific territory. There were no formal protocols. There was no established precedent for submitting criminal DNA to a consumer genealogy database. She was, in the most literal sense, building the methodology as she went. The process took months. She began with partial matches, individuals who shared small but statistically significant segments of DNA with the crime scene profile. These weren't close relatives, they were distant ones, people who shared a great-great-grandparent with the killer, or a common ancestor several generations back. The shared DNA segments were tiny fractions of the genome, but they were real, and they were consistent. From those matches, she began constructing family trees, not from the suspect forward, but from the shared ancestors downward, tracing every branch, every descendant, every person who could theoretically carry that same genetic fragment. She was looking for convergence. She was looking for the point where multiple family trees, built from multiple distant matches, all pointed to the same individual. It is painstaking work. It requires not just scientific expertise, but genealogical expertise, the ability to navigate historical records, census documents, birth and death certificates, immigration records, and the complicated, often incomplete paper trail of human lives lived decades or centuries ago. It requires patience measured not in hours or days, but in weeks and months, and it requires something else entirely. It requires that the right people have already uploaded their DNA. This is the variable that keeps investigators awake at night in the Guthrie case. GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, and the two primary platforms that cooperate with law enforcement, have millions of profiles in their databases. Millions of people who, for various reasons, submitted their genetic information voluntarily. But millions is not everyone. And the distribution of those profiles is not uniform across all demographics, all geographies, all family structures. If the person who walked into Nancy Guthrie's home on the morning of February 1st comes from a family that has never engaged with consumer genetics, a family that has never felt the pull of ancestry websites, never wondered about ethnic origins, never tried to find a distant cousin, then the database may simply not contain anyone close enough to generate a usable lead. That is not a failure of the technology. It is a limitation of the data, and it is a limitation that investigators cannot overcome by working harder or searching longer. They can only wait. They can only analyze what exists. And they can only hope that somewhere in those millions of profiles, there is a person who shares enough genetic material with the individual who took Nancy Guthrie, a person who uploaded their data years ago for reasons entirely unrelated to any crime, to provide the thread that begins to unravel this case. Emmanuel Katranakis put it plainly when he spoke to investigators. The net is wide. But whether the right fish is inside the net is something no one can know until the analysis is complete. There is another dimension to the genealogy question that deserves careful attention, because it speaks directly to why this case is being handled the way it is, and why the public silence from the Sheriff's Department on this specific topic is, in the assessment of multiple forensic experts, entirely deliberate. Investigative genetic genealogy is extraordinarily powerful. It is also extraordinarily sensitive. When law enforcement identifies a potential suspect through genealogy, they do not announce it. They do not move immediately. They watch. They gather additional evidence, physical evidence, digital evidence, behavioral evidence, that will stand independently of the genealogical analysis in a courtroom. Because genealogy, as powerful as it is not by itself sufficient for a conviction. It is a pointer. It is a direction. It is the tool that gets investigators close enough to obtain a court-ordered DNA sample, the sample that will either confirm or eliminate the candidate. In the Golden State Killer case, investigators spent months after identifying D'Angelo as a candidate before making any move. They surveilled him. They collected discarded DNA from that car door handle without his knowledge. They built a case around the genealogical lead before they ever approached him. That is the protocol. And it is a protocol that, if it is being followed right now in the Guthrie investigation, would look from the outside exactly like silence, exactly like nothing happening, exactly like 29 days of investigation with no visible progress. The silence may not be emptiness. The silence may be the sound of the net being drawn tight. Now, the second technology. On February 28th, NBC News published an investigation into the digital forensics dimension of this case. The headline framing was straightforward. The content was anything but. Heather Barnhart is a digital forensics expert who worked directly on the University of Idaho murders, the case that resulted in the arrest and conviction of Bryan Kohberger. She spoke to NBC News about the Guthrie investigation in terms that every investigator in Tucson is almost certainly already thinking about. Her exact words, "Your phone is the silent witness to your life. It knows everything you do." And then she said something that should stop every person watching this from looking away. The loudest evidence can be the lack of evidence. Because here is what that means in the context of this case. Bryan Kohberger, convicted of killing 4 University of Idaho students in November of 2022, believed he had been careful. He had deleted data. He had, according to investigators, disabled location services on his phone during the time surrounding the murders. What he did not account for was what that absence itself communicated. A phone that stops pinging towers, a device that goes dark in a specific geographic area during a specific window of time. That silence became a data point. That silence placed him near the scene. It was the digital equivalent of a signature, drawn in the very act of trying to erase it. On February 28th, Barnhart applied that same framework to the Guthrie case. And what she told NBC News is that whoever was involved in Nancy's disappearance may have left behind crucial digital evidence even if they believed they had covered their tracks. The 41-minute window between 1:47 a.m., when Nancy's doorbell camera was disconnected, and 2:28 a.m., when her pacemaker went silent, is a critical period. During this time, the perpetrator was physically present at or near Nancy's home. And in our hyper-connected world, physical presence almost always equates to digital presence. Cell tower data, Wi-Fi logs, app activity, Bluetooth connections, location pings. Every modern phone communicates with the infrastructure around it in ways that the person carrying it rarely thinks about. Even a phone that is turned off leaves a record of when it was turned off, where it was last active and what it connected to before going dark. These are not theories. These are the documented functions of every smartphone manufactured in the last decade. If the person who disconnected Nancy's Ring camera at 1:47 a.m. was carrying a phone, and statistically, almost everyone is, that phone was in the proximity of Nancy Guthrie's home at that precise moment. It connected to cell towers in the Catalina foothills. It may have pinged Wi-Fi networks from neighboring homes. It may have registered a Bluetooth handshake with a device inside or near Nancy's property. These are the invisible breadcrumbs that, when collected and analyzed, can paint a precise picture of movement and presence. What investigators are doing with that data right now is not simple, it is not fast. And it is not the kind of work that produces press conferences or public announcements. It is the work of assembling thousands of individual data points, each one seemingly insignificant on its own, into a coherent, legally defensible picture of what happened in the Catalina foothills between 1:47 and 2:28 on the morning of February 1st. Cell tower records in that area would capture every device that connected to local towers during that window. That is not a small number of devices. Tucson is a city of over 500,000 people, and even in a residential neighborhood in the early hours of the morning, there are phones active. People awake, people driving, people whose devices are simply running background processes while they sleep. The raw data from those towers is voluminous. Filtering it, cross-referencing it against known devices, identifying anomalies, a phone that appeared in the area only that night, a device that went dark at a specific moment, a connection that originated from a location inconsistent with any innocent explanation, is the work of weeks, not days. This is where artificial intelligence enters the picture. Chris Burbank, former Salt Lake City police chief and a veteran of large-scale investigations, confirmed to NBC News that AI is now being used in the Guthrie case specifically to analyze and cross-reference digital data across social media platforms, communication records, and device activity logs. The volume of data being processed is, by his description, significant. To understand what that means in practice, consider what AI-driven forensic analysis actually does. It does not simply search for a name or a face. It looks for patterns. It looks for behavioral signatures that repeat. A device that appeared near Nancy's home not just on February 1st, but on previous dates. A phone that showed unusual location patterns in the weeks before the disappearance. A social media account that searched for information about Nancy Guthrie, or about the Catalina foothills neighborhood, or about Ring camera systems in the days or hours before the cameras went dark. These are the questions that AI can process across petabytes of information in a fraction of the time it would take any human analyst. And the answers, when they emerge, are not speculation. They are data. They are records that existed before any crime was committed, created by the perpetrator's own devices in the ordinary course of their life. Records that cannot be explained away, cannot be contested as fabricated, and cannot be walked back once they are in evidence. Barnhart's reference to Bryan Kohberger is not incidental. It is instructive. Kohberger was a criminology PhD student. He had studied academically the ways in which criminals are caught. He understood, theoretically, the risks of digital evidence, and yet, when investigators reconstructed his movements using cell tower data, they found that his phone had been in the vicinity of the victim's home on multiple occasions in the weeks before the murders. Not just once, multiple times. The digital record painted a picture of someone who had surveilled the location, who had been drawn back to it repeatedly, whose behavior in the days and weeks leading up to the crime told a story that his own words, later, could not contradict. That is the power of behavioral pattern analysis. And it is the framework that digital forensic experts are now applying to the question of who knew Nancy Guthrie's routine well enough to disconnect her camera at 1:47 in the morning and be gone before the sun came up. Because that knowledge, the knowledge of when she would be home, when she would be asleep, where her camera was mounted, what it covered and what it didn't, that knowledge had to come from somewhere. It had to come from observation, from proximity, from time spent in that neighborhood, on that street, near that house, building a picture of a woman's daily life, detailed enough to act on with precision in the middle of the night. And observation in 2026 leaves records. The cars that drove past Nancy's home in the weeks before February 1st, captured on ring cameras, on traffic systems, on the cameras of neighbors who never thought to check. Their footage, those records exist. The phones that connected to Wi-Fi networks in the neighborhood during daytime hours, during the evening, during the kinds of visits that a person on reconnaissance would make, those records exist. The search queries typed into phones near that address, looking up property records or satellite views or local businesses, those records exist. None of this is certain, none of this is confirmed, but all of it is possible. And all of it is the kind of evidence that investigators with the right tools, with AI-driven analysis and federal data access and the resources of an FBI field office, are fully capable of finding. The question is not whether the digital evidence is out there. The question is whether it is specific enough and whether it is connected enough to a single individual to become the basis for an arrest. Chris Burbank, in his conversation with NBC News, was careful with his language. He did not claim that a suspect had been identified through digital means. He did not suggest that an arrest was imminent. What he said was that the investigation is active, that the data being processed is significant in volume, and that AI is accelerating the analysis in ways that were not possible even 5 years ago. That is the language of an investigation that has not yet reached its conclusion, but it is also the language of an investigation that has not stalled. That is running. That is moving, even if that movement is invisible to the public watching from the outside. 29 days. That is how long Nancy Guthrie has been missing. In that time, the Pima County Sheriff's Department has deployed search teams across the Catalina foothills and the surrounding desert. The FBI has maintained an active presence, transitioning primary operations to its Phoenix field office, a move that signals not a reduction in resources, but a structural shift toward the kind of long-game federal investigation that complex abduction cases require. Specialists in digital forensics, in genetic genealogy, in behavioral analysis. These are not the tools of a local missing persons case. These are the tools of a federal investigation that has concluded the answers will not be found quickly, but will be found. The family has offered a reward that now totals $1.2 million, $1 million from the family, $100,000 from the FBI, $100,000 from Tucson Crime Stoppers. It is an extraordinary sum, larger than the reward in most high-profile cases of this type, and it has, as of this recording, not generated a verified tip that has been publicly acted upon. The silence from potential witnesses in the face of $1.2 million is itself a data point. It suggests either that the circle of knowledge around this crime is extraordinarily small, perhaps one or two individuals who are either directly involved or too afraid to come forward, or that the people who know something do not believe the reward is worth the risk of what they would be revealing. Either interpretation is disturbing. Savannah Guthrie, speaking publicly this week, said words that no child should ever have to say about a parent, "She may already be gone." And then in the same breath she said something else, something that requires a different kind of courage entirely. "We still believe in a miracle." We are blowing on the embers of hope. Those two sentences, existing simultaneously in the same statement from the same person, are the most honest summary of where this investigation stands. They are not the words of someone who has given up. They are the words of someone who has looked at the facts, all of them, including the ones that are hardest to say out loud, and chosen to hold space for both the truth and the hope, both the grief and the determination. Both the 29 days of silence and the belief that silence is not the same as an answer. The tools available to law enforcement in 2026 are unlike anything that existed even 10 years ago. Investigative Genetic Genealogy caught a man who evaded detection for 44 years. Digital forensics placed Bryan Kohberger at the scene of 4 murders through the data trail of a phone he believed he had neutralized. These are not abstract possibilities. They are documented outcomes. They are cases that were solved, not through luck, not through a witness walking into a police station, but through science, through patience. Through the application of tools that the perpetrators never anticipated and could not have defended against. But those tools require something. They require a thread, a relative who uploaded their DNA to a genealogy website out of curiosity, a cell tower record that survived a deletion attempt, a Wi-Fi log that was never wiped, a phone that went dark at the wrong moment in the wrong location and left behind the echo of its silence, a search query typed weeks before a crime that, in retrospect, tells investigators exactly where a person's attention was focused. These threads are either there or they are not. And right now, in laboratories and server rooms and FBI field offices, and the quiet, methodical work of forensic genealogists building family trees from fragments of genetic code, investigators are pulling on every thread they can find. The DNA from those gloves is in a laboratory right now, being analyzed, being compared, being run against a database of millions of profiles contributed by ordinary people who never imagined their information would one day be relevant to a case like this. The digital records from the cell towers surrounding the Catalina foothills on the morning of February 1st exist somewhere in a server right now, being processed, being filtered, being examined by algorithms designed to find patterns that human eyes would miss in 100 years of looking. And what the experts, what the people who built the tools that caught the Golden State Killer and Bryan Kohberger are saying, with consistency and with the authority of documented results, is this: the answer to what happened to Nancy Guthrie almost certainly already exists. It is not waiting to be created. It is not waiting for someone to confess or for a witness to come forward or for a lucky break. It is waiting to be found in data that already exists, in records already created, in threads already present in databases that were built for exactly this kind of search. The question is not whether the evidence is there. The question is whether the thread is long enough to follow, and 29 days in, that question remains unanswered. But it is being asked, with every resource available to federal law enforcement, with technology that did not exist a decade ago, and with the relentless, quiet persistence of investigators who understand that cases like this are not solved in press conferences. They are solved in laboratories, in databases, in the careful, methodical assembly of a picture that piece by piece becomes impossible to argue with. All information in this video reflects what was publicly confirmed and documented as of March 1st, 2026. This is an active investigation. If you have any information related to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line at 520-351-4900. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think investigators are closest to finding right now? The DNA match through genealogy, or the digital footprint that places someone at that scene? This community has been sharp from the beginning, and I want to hear what you're seeing. If this investigation matters to you, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to Crime Blackline Archive. Every case we cover is a real person, a real family, a real mystery that deserves to be remembered and pursued until there is an answer. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 29 days. This case is not cold. The science is running, and we will be here for every step of the way until there is nothing left to report.